I think you have a lot of companies who are forecasting into Q3 and Q4, and they're saying, look, we might not have the same type of budgets to spend on marketing that we did last year. And so typically around this time in the spring, advertisers will meet with networks. They do these big glitzy parties and presentations, and they'll commit up front to spending a certain amount of money. Well, what we're finding is that a lot of those big companies, the Wall Street Journal has reported, GM, PepsiCo, are no longer looking to make those sort of commitments. Why? Well, for one, they know networks are desperate for money and they have more leverage now to negotiate cheaper rates moving forward. But also, two, there's uncertainty. A lot of these companies' supply chains have been impacted, or their products and revenue have been impacted by these stay-at-home orders. And so they don't even, quite frankly, know how much or what they'll be able to market.
You know, in live sports, Sarah, is such a big part of this. We're all waiting to hear what's going to happen with NFL. Looks like it's all systems go. It matters to our network, NBC, Sunday night. It matters to Disney with ESPN and Monday Night Football. How much does the return of live sports, we got NASCAR this weekend, but particularly football, matter to this industry?
It's huge. It's the big juggernaut that everyone's waiting for. And if you notice, NBC Universal, the parent company to CNBC, also an investor in Axios, when they had their big upfront virtual presentation, the one thing that the chairwoman, Lindy Yaccarino, said was, we'll let you know as soon as we know about the NFL. She knew that that's exactly what marketers wanted to hear from her in talking about the fall programming lineup. Now, a lot of networks are not going so far as to actually say what their fall programming lineups are going to be. The only one so far that has come right out and said this is what to expect has been Fox. And most of that has been low budget production, reality TV series, or things that can be easily produced in a pandemic. To your point, though, Brian, the NFL is a massive question mark right now that the whole industry is waiting to see what happens.
Yeah, you know, and the big question, I guess, Sarah, and maybe you've got some insight into this, is what's going to happen when things get, quote, back to normal or normal-ish, right? I mean, the NFL draft did monstrous ratings. I mean, 2 and 3 times what it normally does, because it was the only thing that we had to watch. Our patterns have changed. Jigsaw puzzles are being sold out. Is there going to be this, mad rush back to live TV? Or do you think that our viewing habits, have changed for the short term or maybe even the long term?
Yeah, that's a great point, Brian. And you said at the top of this conversation that sort of binge TV viewing has gone down. A part of that is because, quite frankly, the weather has gotten nice. Some of these stay-at-home lockdown orders have been lifted. But also, I think there's a little bit of news fatigue. At the beginning of this lockdown, people wanted to know, are my kids' schools going to be closed? What precautions do I need to take for my safety? Now, a lot of the news coverage, at least, has shifted to what are the long-term economic impacts of this type of coronavirus. And I think a lot of people find that news to be a less easy to swallow. The other aspect here, though, is if people are not watching as much news, if they're not getting live sports, what's the incentive to pay $100 for a cable bill? And so we saw last quarter a record number of people dropped their cable and satellite bills, over 2 million people roughly. And a huge part of that too, Brian, it wasn't just everyday households, people like you and me. It was restaurants, it was bars that said, look, this is just a really easy expense to cut. And so I think long term, you're going to see an even greater shift to streaming because of this coronavirus and because of the fact, like you said, we don't have live sports and news fatigue is starting to become a little bit real.